welcome to On the Rocks with Dan and Steph. I'm Daniel.
I'm Stefan.
And we are your hosts for this lovely podcast. Today, our topics are going to be covering all the red tape that surrounds the world of alcohol. We're also going to talk about Stefan's entry into the business and how that's going, and all the insider knowledge he's gained that he'll share with you. Is that right?
That's right, Daniel. Thank you.
We're going to jump straight into it. This idea came about, as you may have guessed, in a bar. And we were chilling in our local bar and, having a beer. And Stefan was like,
yeah, so I just came to the realization that, there's, because I'm Serbian, and I realized that market was completely unaccounted for in Ontario's beer supply.
Right.
You go to the LCBO and there's, you have German beer, you have Polish beer, you have beer from China, I think like Tsingtao. So, and I just got to thinking, well, why not have, import Serbian beer? And so I did a lot of research and I realized that while it's technically feasible to import beer from, say, Serbia, for example, or, Lebanon or whatever country you have in mind, there is a lot of red tape that comes into play, and it's very difficult to actually convince the manufacturers that it's profitable. It's going to be profitable for them, and that it's going to, be a good thing for them to import to Ontario because of all this red tape.
Right.
And so the reason for that is because, first you can't directly import as a private citizen, right? Everything has to go through the LCBO.
So the actual importation process goes through LCBO, not just the sales.
That's right. So
oh my God,
this goes back to prohibition. And, people don't realize this, but we actually had prohibition in Canada as well.
Right, it's not talked about very much.
No, it's not talked about very much. We had it in the 20s and 30s, and basically the government was like, okay, we'll let you be able to legally drink alcohol again, but in exchange, we have to have a monopoly.
That happened in Canada.
The U.S., not at all.
So in Canada, prohibition ended with the Canadian government trying to basically monopolize the market.
Right. And
I didn't know that.
That caused a lot of socioeconomic and political issues. So basically after World War I, millions of men came home. And, if you're in the trenches, you have artillery raining down on you, you have PTSD, which was called shell shock at the time.
Right.
You want to unwind as best you can, assuming you haven't been grievously injured and you came back in relatively one piece, and you come back and the government says, yeah, that favorite pastime of yours of drinking with your friends, you can't do that anymore. And so that created a lot of issues. It created a vacuum for organized crime to come in and sort of just basically take over the market and provide this product that everyone wanted to consume, but the government wasn't allowing you to consume. And so, for example, you had the Bronfman family in Quebec, Samuel Bronfman.
That name rings a bell.
Yeah. They started as bootleggers.
Wow.
As alcohol smugglers from Scotland, I believe, and from the UK, where there was no prohibition.
The Bronfman family?
The Bronfman family, right. And so that's the history of sort of alcohol in Canada. But after prohibition ended, the government was like, yeah, we'll lift prohibition, but we have to have a monopoly on it. And that has lasted until this day, so almost 100 years. And so I, as an entrepreneur, as a budding businessman,
right.
If I want to import, say, Serbian beer into Canada, I have to go through the LCBO,
right?
Liquor Control Board of Ontario.
So take us through that process of where would you begin? So we were in that bar. You said, you know what? I noticed there's not Serbian beer on the shelves. Mm-hmm. What if I import some? And the cool thing is you actually went through with it. What was the first step you took? Well, I assume you probably Googled something.
That was exactly my first step.
What was your Google search?
How to import alcohol into Ontario. Because it doesn't work on the federal level. Each province has its own sort of liquor control board.
Exactly. Anyone that went to a different province would know that, right?
Right.
It becomes very apparent. As soon as you cross into Quebec, you can actually buy beer at a gas station, like, most places in the world. Mm-hmm. But here you can't.
Yeah.
So your Google search was how to import
right.
alcohol into Ontario, because the provinces are the ones that throttle that control that, basically.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so essentially what I discovered, I went down a very deep rabbit hole. This was earlier this year. And it's quite complex, and that turns a lot of people off.
Right.
especially if you're not, business savvy, if you're not a reader, if you get distracted easily. There's hundreds of pages worth of PDFs and documents talking about how to go about this process. And there's about, maybe 2,000 people in Ontario who work in like this very specific niche of importing alcohol, who are called authorized representatives or agents of record.
Okay. So that's what you need to become.
So essentially what happens is, in order to become an agent of record, you need to, first of all, you need to have your smart serve.
It all begins with the smart serve, eh?
It sure does. So even if you don't plan to be a bartender or anything like that, you can, you need to go and you need to get your smart serve. I can't remember off the top of my head I think it was less than $50.
Right. So you start by getting the smart serve.
And that's important because in your job as an authorized representative or an agent of record, you basically, you're serving alcohol to managers of LCBO locations of stores. And they are going to try that alcohol, whether it be a beer, whether it be a wine, and they're going to decide whether that's a good fit for their store. And whether it's going to, turn a profit for their store, and whether it's worth stocking, because, especially if you're importing beer, it needs to be chilled. It needs to be, then like LCBO locations have these giant, oftentimes, like walk-in areas, where like refrigerated areas,
like a beer fridge kind of deal.
And it's sort of, there's sort of a lot of competition going on between these different manufacturers and brands to get their products in those refrigerated areas, because there's a limited amount of space.
Right.
And so they have to decide, okay, well, is it worth having this in my store and like pushing this other brand aside so I have space, or is it not? So that's kind of the logistics and economics of it all. And so, yeah, you do offer samples to folks from the LCBO, and they decide. Now, after you get your smart serve, you obviously, stuff that goes into, by the way, the company that I set up is called Beverage Import Group.
BIG.
BIG. And it's
not the notorious kind, though. The law-abiding BIG.
Well, give it some time. We may become notorious one day, but let's hope not.
Yeah.
So what I was saying is, so once you get your smart serve, you obviously need, set up your website. You need to register your business with the government of Ontario. What else? You start your business account with a bank. That makes banking a whole lot easier. And then you start cold approaching. I believe the technical term is cold approaching manufacturers. And the reason you do that with manufacturers.
Sorry, what does cold approaching mean?
So cold approaching means if you don't have any connections in the industry, or any industry for that matter, you approach actors within that industry and you pitch your product.
So
or your
it's
service.
like cold calling, except it's cold
calling.
approaching. It didn't even click for me because I've heard the term cold calling a million times.
Right.
Cold approaching is just that.
It's that, but without the phone. It could be email.
Exactly.
It can be. Now, if your interlocutor, if the person you seek to do business with is on a different continent, for example, in Europe, you're probably not going to be calling them. You're going to be emailing them first.
And you've done that.
And I've done that with about 15 manufacturers. And the reason you want to approach manufacturers first, as opposed to the LCBO, is because the LCBO doesn't actually want to talk to you unless you have something called a manufacturer's authorization.
Okay, and I'm just going to guess before you explain what that is. Is that the manufacturer allowing you to sell their product?
Precisely.
Right, and so the LCBO sees that you have that, and that means there's something going already. They have a reason to talk to you.
That's right. Now, you can have that authorization, and the LCBO could still decide, you know what, we don't think this product is a good fit for our stores.
Right.
And see, you can already sort of see how this can discourage and throw off a lot of people who want to get involved in the industry. It can discourage and throw off a lot of manufacturers abroad, because they're like, okay, well, we like you, we like your pitch, we think you can market our product in this new market, in the Ontario market.
Right.
But hey, like, even if we give you this authorization, that's still no guarantee that the LCBO will want to do business with us.
Yeah.
But anyway, as I was saying, so yeah, you as far as my business goes, you reach out to these manufacturers and you you pitch your services and you explain how you would go about marketing, the sort of, like what they can expect in terms of profit in the first year, in the first little while, why you think your approach would succeed, the demographics of the area in which the sales would take place. And once they give you the authorization, then you go to the LCBO and you say, okay, I have this authorization. Would you like to do business with us? And if they say yes, then the manufacturer sends you samples of their product. Mm-hmm. And you go about carrying one of those refrigerated backpacks.
Right.
You go from store to store and you tell them, okay, hi, sir, there's a high concentration of, say, Portuguese people or Serbian people or whatever manufacturer's beer you're representing in this particular area. And we think that a lot of people would like to taste beer from their home country, that there's a lot of potential.
So you pitch it to them.
You pitch it to them, and
wow.
You come in professionally. You don't have to come in with a suit and tie, but just very dressed cleanly.
Yeah, don't look like you're hungover.
Don't look like you're hungover. And you pitch it to them. You establish rapport with the manager there, and then the decision comes down to the individual manager, assuming the LCBO wants to do business with you in the first place.
So what if they say yes?
Well, like I said, so they say yes, fantastic. You go back to your manufacturer and you tell them they said yes. However, the manufacturer doesn't get to decide how much beer they're going to export to Ontario.
The government gets to decide.
The government gets to decide based on the perceived needs of the LCBO, how much they think they're going to be able to sell. That's another thing that throws manufacturers off, because they look at their profit margin and they think, okay, well, we're not going to make a profit unless we sell, okay, I don't know, I'm just throwing a number around 500 cases of beer a month. But the LCBO comes back and they're like, okay, well, we're only going to buy 200 from you each month. And I tell that to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer says, yeah, well, it doesn't make sense for us to do business in Ontario.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's no point in them, for 200, all this BS they have to go through to export 200 cases. It's like
a month.
Yeah, not worth their time. Next.
Exactly. So it's a difficult industry to get into, and we were talking about this before the podcast started. I think the reason for that is, the government is trying to find a sweet spot between protectionism and allowing citizens of Ontario to enjoy imported products.
Right.
So they want to protect domestic breweries, vineyards, wineries, and distilleries. They want to establish a ready market for them, make sure they're in business, and I'm sure there's behind the scenes stuff going on, like representatives from the industry hobnobbing with politicians and so forth.
Every industry has that, it seems.
Of course. But at the same time, also folks in Ontario want to have their Hennessy, they want to have their Stella Artois, they want to have their imported products. And so and I get it, it's a rational position. What the Ontario government wants to do is they want to protect domestic manufacturers while also giving citizens the chance to try imported products. But obviously that has some downsides, as I just mentioned, and it can be difficult, especially if you're a young entrepreneur and you want to get into the industry. You do face a lot of hurdles, a lot of challenges, and is the government currently doing anything to address that, to make it easier for entrepreneurs to sort of get into the business, to expand? Not really. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but I really hope this works out for you, because the step you're on so far, I'm assuming you're still at the pitching phase.
I'm at the pitching phase. That's absolutely correct.
Have you gotten any samples yet from any beer manufacturer? Or are you still trying to work out the link with a beer supplier?
Well, the thing is, as I said, when I lay out the way the regulations are in Ontario, a lot of manufacturers become skittish and they start doing the math in their head. And
so you have to kind of tell them the regulations beforehand. You have to give them a summary.
Right, because their logical first question is, well, why am I talking to you as a middleman, and why am I not directly talking to the LCBO? And the reason the LCBO has that is because, well, it's strictly about not having to pay someone as an LCBO employee to go to various places around the world and pitch, products for import.
Right.
Rather, they would have someone who's unpaid by the LCBO, who's not an LCBO employee, to go out and to develop these relationships.
It's in their best interest. It kind of this part actually does kind of make sense because they'd be using their own resources for this, and it's really, like you said, it's not in their best interest.
Right. So from a business perspective, it absolutely makes sense. But it also, if you're once you start describing the steps to potential manufacturers, the potential business partners, they start doing the math in their head, and they decide, yeah, for a few hundred cases of, say, beer, or 50 cases of wine a month, are we really going to turn that much of a profit? And maybe they turn a profit of, say, $7,000-8,000 a month. For a large manufacturer like, say, Heineken Serbia or Carlsberg Serbia, which are subsidiaries of those companies, does that really make sense for them if their profits are in the hundreds of millions or billions a year?
You really got me thinking. Where do bars, or I guess if you have a home bar, you would be in that, if you're lucky enough to have that, you'd be in that segment too. Where do they buy their kegs? So the LCBO handles the kegs as well?
Okay, so they handle the import.
Okay.
And folks who import, corporations that import these kegs are, there's only a handful of them. I think there's only 5 or 6. One of them is the beer store.
Mm-hmm.
The beer store is distinct from the LCBO. Okay, so in this case, the beer store would be the authorized representative, the agent of record that's authorized to import kegs into the province of Ontario. And now they can do it because they're a multi-billion-dollar company.
So listen to this. This is very interesting. Who owns the beer store? This is according to the Globe and Mail, by the way. 3 big foreign-controlled brewing corporation. Anheuser-Busch, which is based out of Belgium and Brazil, owns a bit less than half of the beer store. So does Molson Coors Brewing Co., incorporated in the United States. Sapporo Brewers Limited of Japan owns the other small share. Any other breweries who want to sell in the beer store have to pay fees to the owners. A lot of Ontarians are surprised by this. Polls have consistently shown that most of the residents of the province assume that the beer store is owned by the government, like the LCBO.
And you seem to be one of them, right?
I was not sure. I had a feeling it may have been private, but I never looked it up. But I think the crazy thing here is, hypothetically speaking, which would never happen, you could make your own beer store, because if the beer store's private, that means you could make we could make the Stefan and Daniel beer store, and as long as we get the authorizations, blah, blah, blah. But damn well that would never happen, because it seems like the beer store is so big at this point. They build it next to the LCBO. It's like a private entity, and as you can see, we don't win from it. It's owned by foreign companies, or at least most of it, like most of these shares. But it's so huge that it functions as if it was a mirror to the LCBO, which is insane. Like, notice how they're always side by side and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's a little unfortunate, of course. Hopefully there's good change in regards to that here in the future. And I mean, at least we made some progress, I'd have to say.
Under the Ford administration we have, obviously it could be a lot better. But that's up to Mr. Ford to decide if he's going to dangle that as an incentive to his voters,
of course,
in the next election or not. But we've been hearing that he's going to do this and that for the industry for the last 6 years, and not a whole lot has been done. What has been done is encouraging, but there's still a long ways to go.
Right. All right. Well, that was a very productive conversation, and we did cover a lot of topics for our pilot episode.
Sure did.
So thank you very much for listening, everybody. On the next episode, we will be talking about bootleggers, which we mentioned earlier. And if you found that interesting, the topic will be on everyone from Al Capone to Lucky Luciano, and who are history's most scandalous rum runners and what made them famous. The episode being called Brazen Bootleggers. So tune in next Monday for that, and nurse your hangover and the start of your work week with our show. So my name is Daniel.
My name is Stefan.
And you just listened to an episode of On the Rocks. Thank you.